Good morning, Dr. Obama. It's really a pleasure to have you here at the BWI today. I'm very honored, I'm very impressed to be able to interview you. You have been working for many years with children, with young people. You have set up your own foundation a few years ago, and I'm just wondering, you say your children and young people have an incredible potential to change their lives. What's your model actually? Could you explain?
The model is about working with children and their strengths and their weaknesses as well, to make them take responsibility for their lives. For us, it's a very, very big word, because very often children are not listened to. Children are just perceived as just having to go along with what their parents want, what their communities want. And what we're trying to do is trying to teach the children, as well as the community, as well as their parents and caregivers, that children are an integral part of whatever we create in our society. So we work with the children to bring out their potential in terms of their participation. They have to be active players in what happens in their lives. So we work with building their personality, around them being aware that they are responsible for their future. We work with the education system, around them being educated, making sure they stay in school, making sure they get a good education, and even if it's not a formal education, that they also appreciate informal education, so that they end up having an opportunity and perspective and alternatives in order to improve their lives. With improve their lives, we mean that they become financially independent and are able to take care of themselves. Because at the end of the day, all of what we do when we're working in the humanitarian sector, it's about trying to move people from a place of poverty to a place of independence, financial independence. And that's what we try to do in the way we work. And the uniqueness about our model is that we don't give anything for free. We tell the people that they have it already. In the areas we work with our beneficiaries, the children and their families, we look at what resources they have locally that they can realistically use to earn a living, to improve their lives. So we use what they have for them to get what they need. And that's what they also learn to do.
How do you see socioeconomic development? Do you think there's a need to redefine?
I think there's a need to redefine is development aid. Because when you talk of development aid, to me it's just an empty expression or something that doesn't really, if you look at the content of it, doesn't say anything. We have put content into it, but the content we put into the term development aid is of dependency and passivity. We give because we assume that people are poor, or we see them as poor because we perceive poverty in a certain way. So development aid, if it's just left as that term, is not enough. And what I always say, you must include the word economic. Because at the end of the day, what we try to do is move people from a place of poverty to a place of financial independence. And to do that, we have to include the economic aspect of it. They must become part of the value chain. And that's why it can't be about development aid. It has to be about economic growth, actually. And that it has to be sustainable economic growth in order to move them to that space. So not about development aid. We don't talk about development aid. We talk about sustainable economic growth.
Thank you. How do you see young people, what would be their role in socio-economic development process?
The young people must participate. That's key to the process, because actually it's about their lives. It's about what they want to do with their lives. And if we start making the decisions for them and carving a map around what their lives should be, then they're going to continue to dependent on us. What's the next step? Auma, how do I do this? And they must be the ones who come up with the solutions. They must be the ones who come up with the ideas. So we just teach them to be critical, to be creative, and to be independent, and to be active, proactive in living their lives. So they definitely are the drivers of what we do.
What would be your message here? BWI is having this international event held every 4 years, our Congress, with trade unionists from all over the world. What would be your message to them, actually? How could we work together to bring about social change?
I think one of the key things, of course, close to my heart is that it has to be inclusive of young people, because they are really the drivers of our future. And in order to have the next generation of wonderful people in BWI, you cannot ignore the fact that you have to start early with the young people. You need to have them heard already while they're learning from the older generation, so that they have that interaction. Because when you're then looking around for the next set of leaders, if you've not paid attention to them at all, they won't be really perceptive to whatever you have to suggest. They will take on the roles as required of them, but they may not do it the way you might have been able to guide them, so that it becomes a synergy of young minds and older minds working together to improve what you do on the ground. I think that's very, very key. Of course, another element is not just young people, but in particular young girls, young women. Because as I've found out is that the BWA has very few women at the top of the spectrum. So you need to increase that number, because really, even in the work that I do, very many times, yes, of course, the men participate, and we don't try to differentiate, we don't push the men aside. But the most active, the most nurturing within all the different spaces we work are really the women folk. And that's the softer touch that gives that work that we do its human factor. That is how I see it. And I'm not being biased just because I'm a woman. It really is a fact. So it has to be a lot more inclusive, the work that you do. Of women, sorry. It has to be more inclusive of women and young people.
You know that the BWI is very much involved in sport events around the world, the World Cup, Winter Olympics, and so on forth. Regarding construction work of stadiums, hotels, infrastructure for those big events. I know that you've been using sports as a tool for social change, especially to improve the lives of young girls in your country. Can you explain a bit how you've done so?
Well, we've done it, and we still do it, because in the work I do in the foundation, we still use sports. That's the biggest catch for young people, because it's continuous, it's fun, they keep coming back. So for us, it's a really important tool. But we did it, and I've done it before, not just in my country, but really we were working in about 6 different countries around the world. And the idea, again, is because it mustn't be something that doesn't interest young people. And young people are interested in sport. And it's really a good tool to replica what happens in the real world. Competitiveness, commitment, management of time, just respect for others, you know, playing your part, you know, the team effort and all that. It really is a way to, you can use it in very many ways to reflect what happens on the ground, how people interact with each other, while having fun, while giving each other space, and while being able to have also celebrative moments where you feel, oh my God, I've done really great because I've scored a goal for my team. This whole spirit of social, being together, sports does that very well, and we continue to use it as a tool.
I would have a last question. You know that, as you mentioned before, the BWI is very interested in women issues. Given our sectors, construction and wood and forestry, the BWI doesn't have many women unionized. Would you have any special ideas you could give us to improve this situation?
I think you have to make the women understand that it's important for them. Anybody is motivated by the fact that they have to ask the question, what's in it for me? So I think BWI has to go back and ask itself, what are they giving the women? And why are the women not participating? And if you make it clear to the women that it's important to them, they will participate. Because my experience in the work we do already, and in the groups of parents that work with us and caregivers that work with us, the women are at the forefront. They're very articulate, they're very active, but they're active because they understand it's important for them, and they have something that is worthwhile in participating. And also you have to consider with BWI, if it's about construction, how many women are actually as workers in the construction environment. They're not that many. So we need to encourage employment of more women in this sector, because there are many women who could work in that sector. We know it's already happening. So if we increase the numbers of women, then they see as a group that it's important for them. But at the moment, they feel maybe they're just working along, they're the exception to the rule, and they mustn't be the exception to the rule. So like we do, you all must learn that instead of, it's not about saying we want to be equal, it's about saying don't leave the women behind. So make sure that they keep up with the men. And that is my advice, I think. So look to increase their numbers and then make sure that they don't get left behind. Because as women, we tend to leave the space for the men. We step back and let the men lead. But we must keep up with the men.
I think you're giving a very encouraging message to the women attending this Congress. We have many discussions around women here. Thank you very much. And if you want to add something, you're welcome.
I would also add to the women is that they must claim that space, because what I don't believe in is saying, oh, the men didn't give us a chance, and you know, we must claim it. We take the space for ourselves, because as a man, they're competing with us as well. They also want that space. So if you want that space, you go for it. You take that space, you claim it. And then it becomes yours. So don't be passive and wait for the men.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.